Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Welcome back. Episode number 3030. We made it. All right. Rolling right along here. Good to be with you on Weather Weekly. I am your host, meteorologist Marcus Bailey from Wish TV in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I know usually at the beginning of the month in September, we usually kind of talk about, the beginning or how the month kind of goes climate-wise. But since last week, and we talked about Ida making landfall in Louisiana, and that dropped on a Wednesday. By Wednesday night, Thursday, my goodness, Ida made a lot of noise and actually probably did more damage in terms of flooding in the Northeast Wednesday night into Thursday morning than what they dealt with in Louisiana. I'm not trying to downplay what happened down in Louisiana because of landfall. But it was just an immense story because it hit, New York City and Philadelphia and even Boston. So we're going to spend some time kind of recapping that. And then hopefully in next week's episode 31, we'll get into your September climate data and stuff like that. Okay. But in our local headlines, I did want to briefly touch on where we finished up in August here. Obviously, it was a hot month, right? We kind of talked about the final numbers here. Had some heat waves kind of briefly August 10th through the 12th, and then the August 24th through the 29th. All daily temperatures averaged about 10 degrees above normal for most locations. It was the hottest August for the Indianapolis area since 2016, as well as the first year with an August hotter than July. I think that's interesting, since 2016 as well. This comes from the Weather Service here. It did tie for the 12th hottest on record in Indianapolis. The monthly maximum was reached on the 24th at all first order airports, with most locations reaching the mid-90s. A few sites also tied the highest value. On the 12th, 22nd, and 27th, 97 degrees was the highest mark reached at any co-op site. Tipton on the 24th, and Southwest Purdue Ag Center northeast of Vincennes on the 25th. Columbus Co-op site in Bartholomew County did reach 95. Our hottest temperatures in Indianapolis, we did it twice at 94. Another interesting stat for you, Indianapolis reached 80 degrees or higher on every day, which made it only the fifth time in the area's 150-year record or a 30-year return period. Normally, 6 days in August have high temperatures under 80. August 2021's above normal readings were in contrast to the near normal readings observed in both July of 2021 and August of 2020. So some interesting stuff there. Every reporting station anywhere between 2 to 3.5 degrees above average. Precip-wise, it ran pretty dry. We salvaged some of the month. It was going to be pretty much top 10 if we didn't get some rain near the end. We did. Still ended up 39th driest on record in Indianapolis. And just some quick blurbs from the Weather Service. August, normally central Indiana's driest summer month. As the 3 to 3.5 inches normally seen by most locations is typically 1 to 1.5 inches less than June or July totals. This year certainly exemplified this climatological pattern, with most of the region totaling 1.5 to 4 inches. So it kind of depended on where you're going, including only just shy of 2 inches of rainfall at Indianapolis International Airport, which was only 62% of normal. The highly variable monthly totals across the region were driven by several days days of isolated scattered heavy rains from thunderstorms, particularly during the last 2 weeks of the month. Several 4 to 6 inches totals were reported across mainly north to north central and southwest to east of Shoals. That's Martin County. 6.21 inches in Avon in Hendricks County, and just over 6 inches of rainfall in Anderson and Madison County. However, most locations saw below normal rainfall for the month, some spots significantly so. Lowest reported totals were 0.67 inches near Paragon, that's in Morgan County, and 0.70 inches southwest of Thorntown in Boone County. Heaviest daily rainfall reports included 2.17 inches southeast of Noblesville and Hamilton County from the storms of the 19th, 4.38 inches in Avon on the 25th, 2.34 inches in Kokomo and Howard County on the 26th, 4.4 inches in the southeastern portions of Muncie and Delaware County on the night of the 29th and 30th, and 3.92 inches near Shoals on the 30th when flooded roads were reported across Lawrence County. Early August 2021 continued late July's general dry trend, although when focusing on monthly totals, August 2021's overall dry pattern was in sharp contrast to the anomalous wet June 2021 and July 2021. Despite below normal precipitation in August, Indianapolis's year-to-date total, 31.31 inches through August 31st, is still 0.41 inches above normal. August 2021's dry trend paralleled August 2020 when Indianapolis measured only 2.09 inches for the month. So yeah, even though we were very dry, we ended up okay in most locations. I know lawns were getting kind of crunchy, but we weren't in drought stage. And many locations weren't even in abnormally dry stages because of all of the rain that we picked up for June and July. So it's been kind of a healthy amount and kind of at the right times. It's all just kind of times out together. So that's kind of briefly looking at the month of August. Real quick, too, just kind of under miscellaneous notes here. The month's maximum wind gust at the Indianapolis airport was 41 miles per hour on the 12th. Greater peak wind gusts at other first-order airports included 48 in Muncie on the 29th and 43 in Lafayette on the 12th, and Bloomington from the south. That was in the 27th. Fog was reported in Indianapolis on 11 days, mainly during the second half of the month, with dense fog, that's visibility of less than a quarter of a mile. On the 17th and the 25th, all other first-order airports saw more days with fog, ranging from 14 days at Muncie and Eagle Creek to 25 at Bloomington. That's pretty incredible, considering that August is not typically a real foggy month because it is running a little bit dry. That's interesting that there were so many foggy days. Most sites saw 4 to 5 days of dense fog, with greatest prevalence on the 17th, 19th, 20th, 23rd. Bloomington reported dense fog on 7 consecutive days during the 17th through the 23rd. Thunder was reported on 9 days at Indianapolis, with the frequency at other airports ranging from 6 days at Terre Haute to 10 days at Eagle Creek. The fog certainly was due to the fact of some of these spotty thunderstorms that I mentioned during the precipitation part of that recap there for the month of August. So they go on and talk about the September outlook. We will hit up on that in next week's episode as we look to the month of September. Quickly, weather headlines around the nation here. Tropical development kind of getting busy again. We've got a massive storm right now. Thankfully, staying out to sea. This is Larry, Hurricane Larry. Latest advisory here. Let's see the latest update here on Larry. This was at 5 a.m. on Tuesday, September 7th, Eastern Time. Looked like the maximum sustained winds were 120 miles per hour and a northwest movement at around 10 miles per hour. So that does put that at a major hurricane here. Now, it does get downgraded a bit. It will just clip, it looks like, Bermuda by Thursday afternoon, and then kind of makes a hard turn to the north and east. So this should not, if this forecast holds holds true, not directly impact the United States, although you could have some choppy seas up along the mid-Atlantic and the New England coasts as Larry kind of churns through. We are keeping an eye out for possible new development over the next 2 to 5 days. Nothing real significant as of right now. There's one little system to watch in the the Gulf, just to the west of the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Kind of a low threat for that to develop over the next 48 hours, 10% right now. So that's what we'll keep an eye on, but that's usually an area where we start to see more development is in that Gulf of Mexico area for the month of September and October. So we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. Speaking of tropical, we're going to kind of get to part 2. We weren't planning this, but what happened last week, I think it's worthy to note. Part 2 of Ida and its impacts and how things are recovering right now, both in Louisiana and in the Northeast, which was also hit equally as hard, and the cleanup continues. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Episode number 30. Thanks for being with us here on Weather Weekly. And again, this is going to be kind of a two-parter. It's connecting to the last one. We didn't intend this, but I think it's worth spending at least a little bit of time on what ended up happening with Ida, even though it was not a hurricane. It wasn't even a tropical storm anymore, that just created such devastation up in the north and east late last week. So let's kind of look at where we stand right now. First, we're going to go into Louisiana. And really the biggest problem, what happened in Louisiana, and we touched on this in last week's episode, was that Ida was more of a wind event in Louisiana as opposed to flooding. We talked about that the levees did their job. There was some heavy rain. It was a very slow mover, so that's where a lot of the flooding issues did kind of come from, because there were some areas that kind of got up to a foot or more of rainfall. But that's not a long-lasting issue. That's more of a short-term event that just, the systems just can't take on that amount of water that quickly. And so you get flooded roads and that kind of stuff. But those eventually will recede, as opposed to, for example, what happened with Katrina when the levee fails. You have water rushing in, you're stuck with that for days, weeks, maybe around months, just kind of depending on the weather situation there. So in Louisiana, it was a wind-driven event. As of now, and we're recording this on September 7th in the morning here, the poweroutage.us, great website if you never tried it out. If you're interested in kind of seeing how states are impacted by events, mostly weather events. They will show you, and they'll break it down by counties, or in this instance, parishes in Louisiana. They'll also update it to utility providers on there as well. So check here, it's Tuesday morning. It's 415,190 customers. Actually, I think the way that works is actually houses without power. So that it actually means that more people are, assuming that you have families that are living in these houses. They're not all just, a single person in each house, that there's more people that are actually impacted with this. So you're probably getting in the millions impacted. Entergy, that's Entergy. That is the big power supplier in New Orleans. So the highest populated city in the state, and was hit hard. They have 369,000 customers out. Again, that's households, not assuming how many people live in each household. So the number is obviously going to be much higher when it comes to tracking those numbers. Okay. CNN article here that I was kind of perusing through. This was just written, looking at the date here, updated September 5th. So that was on Sunday of Labor Day weekend. And I'll go ahead and read just straight from the CNN article. And what the headline is that power could be off for weeks. Some areas of Louisiana that were hit hardest by Hurricane Ida could be looking at more than 3 weeks before power is restored. That's according to Entergy Louisiana. Again, that's the big power supplier in New Orleans. I'm not going to go with the parish names because some of them, frankly, I cannot just pronounce. But these are parishes that kind of surround southeastern Louisiana and New Orleans. Those areas may not have electricity until September 29th, so the end of the month. Sunday afternoon, 1 week after Ida made landfall on the Gulf Coast, more than 598,000 customers were still without power. That's according to PowerOutage.us. Entergy Louisiana, which provides electric service to more than 1 million customers, estimated that power will be restored to the vast majority of its customers by Wednesday. So that would be today, if you're listening to the podcast as it drops, Wednesday the 8th. The governor was obviously taking questions. Electricity is one of the biggest challenges that we have across Southeast Louisiana. There's not even rate of restoration going on, and that's always going to be the case. I'm always happy to see people getting powered up, and some people are going to be quite a while. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards said on Saturday the number of customers without power by midday Saturday was 718,000, which includes homes and businesses that equate a lot more people, Edwards said at the news conference in Livingston Parish. That's down from a peak of 1.1 million customers who were without power immediately after Ida battered Louisiana. Edwards said that the electrical infrastructure needs reinforcement, but there are limitations. It's hard for me to imagine that we will ever have an electrical infrastructure or other types of infrastructure as well that can withstand a storm of this severity without any disruptions, but we know we can minimize those disruptions. That's according to Governor Edwards there. So, and obviously that's going to cost a lot of money to go into. And again, to his point, they spent a lot of money after Katrina on the just devastation, the death toll, one of the most catastrophic weather events that's ever happened in our country's history. Millions and millions and millions of dollars to upgrade the levee system in and around the New Orleans area, so nothing like that can ever happen again. It's interesting, and I think we mentioned this in last week's podcast. If I did not, I apologize. I think it's worth mentioning. In Meteorology 101 with Dr. Arnold, who I've spoken greatly about in this podcast series here, he would take us through what if catastrophic events in our country. And, two of them, one would be an EF5 tornado hitting downtown Dallas or downtown Oklahoma City. But I think Dallas was kind of the first one just because Dallas is such a larger city than Oklahoma City is. But both of those are in what we say is Tornado Alley, right? But really, you could say it just about any city now. Nashville. I mean, Nashville's been hit just recently. We had a podcast with that. Birmingham, Alabama always seems to be in the line of sight for very violent tornadoes. But Dallas was kind of the one, right? So that would be one. The other one, and we said this as freshman meteorology students, 18 years old, but just knowing what we knew then. So this was in 2001, that a Category 5 storm hitting New Orleans would also create one of the, worst natural disasters in our nation's history. What's interesting is Katrina was not a Category 5. It was a Category 3. But we saw the devastation it brought. It was at one time a Category 5 and brought that just immense amount of storm surge. And so that one kind of lived up to the expectations. So, it was well known that the city of New Orleans was not really prepared for that type of storm. And unfortunately, it took that type of storm to kind of, fix the issues down there in terms of the levee system. Can you fix the power grid? That's something, maybe one day we'll get somebody on that's going to know a lot more about that than me. Because obviously we don't deal with that here, but what would be the equivalent to that could be as disastrous? Could you imagine if we had a blizzard that knocked out power for weeks on end here in central Indiana? Because you think about blizzards, what usually follows a blizzard is brutal cold. We haven't had a lot here. I mean, everybody kind of equates the blizzard of 78, but there have been other blizzards that obviously won't stack up to the force of that. But, you think about, you get a situation where you have several inches of snow, combine that with, 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, you're weighing down that snow. And you get power outages for weeks on end. That's going to create a very disastrous situation here. So how do you protect the infrastructure? I think that's a good question. That's a good question to bring up to people that know a lot more about that kind of stuff than me. So maybe that's something that maybe we can talk about in a later podcast. But again, that's where they stand in Louisiana. So it could be another month before they get the power completely on down south. To what happened in the Northeast. This was a situation that was unbelievable. We knew that there was going to be an immense amount of rain. I don't think anybody could have foreseen the flooding that was going to occur in, let's say, New York City or New Jersey, extremely highly populated areas. The video was just unbelievable. Of just water running into the subways, people fleeing from their homes in Manhattan and these apartments. And it was tough to watch. This is from Reuters here. This was on September 2nd. Flash flooding killed at least 44 people. And I think that's important to note. There were more fatalities attributed to Ida in the Northeast when it was not a tropical system anymore. It was a post-tropical system compared to the fatalities that happened in Louisiana. 44 people died in 4 northeastern states as the remnants of Hurricane Ida unleashed torrential rain that swept away cars, submerged New York City subway lines, and grounded airline flights. Across a large swath of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut, residents spent the day coping with waterlogged basements, power outages, damaged roofs, and calls for help from friends and family members stranded by flooding. Reuters put out this graphic here. It's Reuters graphics. And the text says, the 7+ inches of rain that fell across Central Park Wednesday would fill a 280-foot cube and just about submerge the Statue of Liberty. And they have a picture of this cube, this 280-foot cube, and size comparison to the Statue of Liberty. And the only thing that's sticking out of that cube is the torch from the statue. So that shows you how much rain fell in a very short amount of time, too. That was the biggest problem. It wasn't the amount of rain. It was how quickly that amount of rain fell. In most of those areas, it fell within maybe a 2 to 3 hour span. And I don't know if there's any infrastructure in the United States or in the world, for that matter, that could take on that amount of water. This is another tweet. Flooding killed at least 40 people in the Northeast as remnants of Hurricane Ida unleashed torrential rains that swept away cars, again, submerged subway lines in New York City. That was another tweet that the Reuters pushed out. National Weather Service confirmed 2 tree-snapping tornadoes also struck Maryland on that Wednesday, one in Annapolis, another in Baltimore. A 19-year-old had reported to have died after trying to rescue his mother from a flooded basement in Rockville, Maryland. So again, this was all along the Northeast. The damage came 3 days after Ida, one of the most powerful hurricanes. We mentioned this. It was the 5th strongest hurricane to make landfall, following the 4 Category 5 storms. So out of the Category 4 storms, it was the strongest that has made landfall. But the loss of life in the Northeast dwarfed the confirmed storm-related death toll of 9 in Louisiana. I do want to go here briefly also to a report from, this is CBS 2, where families, 4 of them, had to evacuate. I believe this is in Staten Island in New York.
Now on Staten Island, several families not allowed in their homes after flooding caused extensive damage, leaving cracks in the foundations.
CBS 2's Allie Bauman joins us now live from Mariners Harbor section with more. Allie.
Christine and Dick, all 4 of these basements were feet deep in water during last week's storm, and even though they've been drained in the days since and the residents have been sleeping upstairs, today the Department of Buildings found that these cellar walls are no longer structurally stable, and now everybody has to clear out.
We lost everything.
Deb Fuentes is leaving empty-handed from her home of 15 years.
Look at this water.
She and her husband were living in the basement here in Mariners Harbor. Wednesday, waves of floodwater took everything she owned.
Me and my husband were in the street trying to clear these 2 drains that were backing up. The manhole was coming up like a geyser, and my kids were downstairs, and they were trying to hold the door closed, and they couldn't. It was a lot.
Nearby in the Westerly neighborhood, Eve Rose Lodskar has had to totally gut her basement.
4 feet. That's how high the water was?
Yes. It took days to drain and dry, and by then everything had mold.
And my sister lives down there. She has nothing, everything lost.
Staten Island is in one of 5 counties in New York included in President Biden's major disaster declaration, offering up to $34,000 in grants for residents.
The city is going to send teams out to all affected areas, door to door, to make sure people sign up, to cut through the red tape.
Monday, Mayor de Blasio, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Senator Chuck Schumer toured homes in Woodside, Queens.
Every customer has their own safe light storage.
Dry. Some residents here blame the city for this disaster, claiming crews did not turn on a pumping station fast enough to divert the water.
People who died right around the corner from us. And my friend almost drowned.
Over in Westchester, the appliances in Bobby Sam's building are ruined. The baseboard heaters need to be ripped out and replaced.
The strength of the water, it pushed everything in.
Sam tried shutting the power down during the storm, but became trapped in the swirling water.
Up to my chest, and it was pushing me around like in a circle.
Back here in the city, Mayor de Blasio has pledged to improve the sewer infrastructure. And as for the residents here, the Red Cross is helping them relocate for the time being. We're live in the Mariners Harbor section of Staten Island. Allie Bauman, CBS 2 News.
So, yeah, rough stuff. And that's just, there was hundreds of people that had to deal with that. I'm just reading some articles there that, even Mayor de Blasio in New York City is going door to door and requesting and trying to encourage people to apply for federal aid. This is an area that's not used to that. But what's interesting is you had Henri, I was trying to think of the name here, just a few weeks ago, dump an immense amount of rain in that same area. And then just a few weeks to follow that up, you get the remnants of Ida coming in. This is also an area that was hit extremely hard in 2012 with Sandy. They call it Superstorm Sandy. And it's not an official weather term, but that's, I think, how, the media has kind of dubbed that now. So the problem is New York City, these high populated areas, they are just not built. No, I don't know if you or ever will be built to kind of withstand that kind of water, right? You go back to it again. You're talking 7, 8, 9, 10 inches of rainfall in the Northeast. It's a lot of water in a short amount of time. And I don't know if you can have infrastructure to kind of to take that on. So now you're going to have, you're going to have some people that are going to debate this and how you can fund. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk because of the recent hits that New York City has taken over the years, over the last 10 years with Sandy, with Henri, with Ida, on how do you fix this? How do you fix this? How do you fix this flooding and devastation that they're getting in the nation's most populated area? Right, and I think that's where it's coming from. You know, there was so much devastation in Louisiana, but all the headlines were going to go to, unfortunately, what happened here in New York, and rightfully so. You had many more people perish, unfortunately, because of this flooding. So how do you take that on? What's interesting, I think. And we'll get much debate as a lot of these now politicians works to gather funding and ways to strengthen the infrastructure to prevent some of these things from happening. New York City picked up in the last month and a half. Broke a record twice in terms of daily rainfall rates. They did it once with Henri, only to be followed up, and not only followed up, but shattered by the remnants of Ida that came through, where, again, Central Park picked up 7 inches of rainfall. There were areas in New Jersey that picked up 10. I saw some areas in Pennsylvania picked up over a foot of rain. So it's going to be one of these things that's going to be debated for a long time here. And, again, fair or not, it gets a lot more pub because of where it hit. If this rolls through the Mid-South and places like Nashville or Atlanta are hit equally as hard as New York City does it get the publicity? Sure. But will it be a topic of conversation for as long? I don't know. I'd like to think it would. But I'm not sure if it necessarily would or not. But yeah, just devastating. And where do you go from here in terms of, if, and I don't know if it's a matter of if, it's when this happens again, will we get as much? Hopefully not, but we all kind of sat there and said, well, Sandy was kind of an anomaly. We'll never see something like Sandy happen again. And while we technically have not, we were worried about the surge with Sandy more than anything. But the rain was immense. The wind was immense when Sandy came in. It's kind of the same thing that we've said. Well, we hope that we never see a Katrina again because we have solidified those levees and we won't see that type of flooding. There's always that next storm that kind of pushes you over the edge and said, nope, no more. Hopefully that's Ida in the Northeast there in New York City specifically, that they can figure out a way to help out the infrastructure. But how do you do that in a city that populated, that's concrete mainly? It's not going to drain well. Where's the water go? There's not much grass there. It's a lot easier for those places to flood. The drains will get clogged. All the trash. Debris, all that other stuff. And you don't have dirt and grass to soak that in. Where does the water go? How do you fix that in New York City? If you've been to New York City, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Manhattan specifically, right? Obviously, if you get out in some of the boroughs and some of these neighborhoods, you get a little bit of grass, but still not much. Not much. So I'm not sure how you fix that problem. So it'll be interesting to see how New York City kind of takes over and deals with this situation now as they are continuing to kind of, deal with the situations there. I was reading another article from CNN about another family. I mean, they had water up to eye level in their apartment, in New York City. That's just from rain. That's pretty incredible there. And that's got to be a problem that's fixed because you have a lot of people that live in those types of apartments on the lower level. What do you do? And now they can't go back. And now you run into the problem that some or many of these buildings are now not structurally sound. So now that's going to be another problem they're going to be dealing with for weeks. Can people even go back into their apartments? So they have to tear these buildings down now and just start over again. So something we'll be watching for, but just a sad situation. So I think it was worth a mention, though, another podcast episode on just exactly what happened. If you look on some of the 24-hour rainfall maps, what I find very interesting is what happened with Ida, the remnants, and how the rain, it just seemed to ramp up as it got to New England. If you look at a swath of rainfall estimates over the last couple of weeks, it was very heavy in Louisiana. It was moderately heavy as Ida kind of ramped as it moved through the Mid-South. So Arkansas, Tennessee, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, there were some flooding issues there, but not nearly as significant. And then once it got up into the north and east, it's like it hit a whole nother level of heavy rain. It was very fascinating. AccuWeather says the 30-day rainfall percentage for places like New York City, Philadelphia, northern New Jersey, now at 300% above the average. It's just immense. Now, they are going to start to dry out. That's the good news. But, man, they could use it. So yeah, just interesting stuff. We'll see where we kind of go here. Obviously, they're going to be dealing with some rain this week, and that may kind of intensify some flooding issues. Obviously, a lot of the rain is receded, but they're waterlogged there. So there could be some agitation to some minor flooding. It looks like Wednesday night into Thursday morning up in the Northeast as a cold front moves through. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully for some better days ahead for the North and East. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Your first full week of September forecast that's coming up next year on Weather Weekly. Quick look at your forecast here for the week of September 6th. Should be very quiet here after some storms rolled through along a cold front Tuesday night. From Wednesday through Friday, very comfortable Canadian air sliding in, highs mid-upper 70s to around 80 degrees, and should be sun-filled as well. I think the weekend looks wonderful as well, low to mid-80s, both Saturday and Sunday, and should be dry. And even early next week, Monday and Tuesday, you're looking at highs into the mid-80s. So very, very nice early September weather, and we're going to be running above average. And the 6 to 10 day outlook, looking at the Climate Prediction Center right now, really kind of calling for that above average temperatures, below average precipitation the next 8 to 14 days, which would take us through the middle of the month. Still calling for above average temperatures, but slightly above average precipitation, which would not be a bad thing. So that's a look at the forecast, and that takes you all the way through the middle of September. We'd love to hear your thoughts here. Email me anytime, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also hit me up on social media at Marcus Bailey on Twitter and Instagram, and Marcus Bailey Weather. Search that out on Facebook. Leave us a comment on any of the previous podcasts, or if you'd like to hear a subject matter, we can touch on that. Again, just reach out to us, and we would love to hear you. Hope to hear you and see you on episode 31. Next week here at Weather Weekly, we'll be talking about what to look forward to for the month of September. And while you're here, make sure you check out all the other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network. We'll see you next week.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com, and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.